So Jensen Huang is here in Beijing. He gave a speech at the opening of the Supply Chain Expo in the morning on Wednesday, and then he spent about 90 minutes with reporters. First, kind of in a very casual Q&A outside in the courtyard under the sun, and then he realized, oh wow, we actually have an air-conditioned room, and let's all go in there. I mean, he really did not give us that much details in terms of what's the status of these H20 lesser advanced U.S. export control compliant chips coming into China. He said that the U.S. government is in the process of processing the licenses, but Nvidia hasn't received them yet. And in terms of Chinese companies' orders, he did not provide that much detail, making it sound like he was quite busy. But maybe his team had gotten orders from some companies, potentially Tencent. So Jensen's really here trying to be a business person. It's a huge market for the company. There's billions and billions of dollars that the company could make here, and they've talked about how much their company has lost because they have not been able to sell into China. And so, he was really complimentary of a lot of the Chinese AI models, and also Xiaomi. He met with the Xiaomi CEO Lei Jun, and really said he even wants to buy one of the Xiaomi electric cars, as Xiaomi uses the Nvidia Thor chips for some of its vehicles. So all of this, Jensen is here in China and trying to distance himself from the politics, saying that his understanding is the Nvidia chips and the Chinese control over rare earths is part of the exchange between U.S. and China, but he doesn't know exactly what is going on at that high level between the U.S. and China. So he's just trying to make sure his company can stay competitive in this entire global AI race. Let's have a listen to what he said about the investing plans for China.
If you want to maintain, you have to invest. The market is moving so fast and it's so competitive. And, none of my competitors are maintaining. They're all investing so that they could be a world leader. And so we have to continue to advance ourselves and every single day improve so that we could deserve the businesses that we have.
So Jensen Huang's really emphasized a lot of the competition in China, especially Huawei. And in the same breath, he talked about Huawei being a formidable competitor and also how nobody should be underestimating China's manufacturing capabilities, and that's something Huawei, from building its own chip and entire cloud system. Jensen Huang pointed out that Huawei can actually go to market directly because it has this entire infrastructure. And my understanding is too that Huawei has been sending people to mines, to the electric car industry, to many of these really vertical and potentially dry areas of AI application, and developing AI simultaneously with the industry. So that's a huge edge of competition in terms of how AI actually makes money. And Jensen Huang seems like he has his eye on this because he said that the RTX Pro, which is also coming to China, the big focus there is going to be on factories and manufacturing. So while there's lots of excitement about Nvidia becoming this $4 trillion company, there are more and more questions about what does it mean in terms of AI's usefulness, and that's something that Jensen said he's watching himself. Back to you.
Ev, this new chip, the RTX Pro, which is supposed to launch in, I think, September, right? Is this the same thing as the budget sort of no frills without the bells and whistle chip that we were talking about a couple of days ago? And if it is, and if it's focused on manufacturing in China, this addresses robotics as well, does it not? Not so much humanoid robots, but because, China probably has the largest installed base of robotics in manufacturing right now.
Right, so it sounds like this chip can support sort of virtual environments where they could train or potentially even deploy some of this automation. And Jensen himself was very excited about the potential of AI for robotics. So he's seeing how AI is really being applied in many aspects of China's economy. He mentioned a lot of the Chinese internet apps during his opening speech, and he talked about a lot of other applications, even from DeepSeek's open source model, which he said nearly 99% of companies and countries around the world are actually downloading locally and using it for things like healthcare and imaging. So it's not necessarily all the AI that's living on closed systems in the cloud like ChatGPT currently is. So we'll have to see, again, the big question I think is how is AI actually turned into something that matters for business instead of just all this training. And it seems like, from Jensen's perspective, the industry is really shifting from this period of, okay, how are the models performing, how smart they are, but actually to how can they be applied, how useful they are, and China potentially has a big opportunity to play there. So Jensen doesn't want to miss out as a company. He's been telling the U.S. government that we can't miss out on this as a country. And if you read the latest edition of the China Connection newsletter, we talk about how foreign investors are really excited and looking for opportunities in China's AI market.
Officials reportedly blocking an agreement that would allow the UAE to buy billions of dollars worth of Nvidia chips. A preliminary deal has been in the works since May, when President Trump visited the Middle East. But sources telling the Wall Street Journal that both countries haven't been able to work out the mechanics of the deal due to concerns that China would get its hands on Nvidia's most advanced AI chips. They're also concerned about Huawei, which is reportedly trying to sell its chips in the Middle East as well. Officials from both the US and UAE reportedly discussed the deal in depth on the sidelines of the Tech and Energy Summit in Pittsburgh earlier this week. Let's get one take on what is unfolding here. Gil Luria is Managing Director at D.A. Davidson. He joins us live now. Gil, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here. What's your understanding of what the holdup is here, particularly after President Trump gave his approval to send these Nvidia chips to the UAE during his visit back in May?
Yeah, the U.S. At large is trying to prevent China from having the lead in AI. Currently, most of the fastest models are coming from the U.S., but there's a lot of Chinese labs that are catching up quickly. And had they had NVIDIA's most advanced chips, they may actually be in the lead. So the U.S. is moving along multiple fronts to make sure that it sustains the lead in AI in front of China, because it sees it as a national security threat. So on one hand, it's trying to allow Chinese companies to buy degraded NVIDIA chips, but on the other hand, it's taking several measures to prevent China from having the most advanced chips, not just in terms of direct sales to China, but also sales to countries that are suspected to have forwarded or resold some of those chips to China. So that includes Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. And from this news, it sounds like the U.S. government is concerned about shipments of the most advanced chips to the Middle East arriving in China. These are solvable problems because you can start putting trackers in some of these most advanced servers. But until they're solved, this may be a little bit of a hitch in the ability to build these data centers in countries that the U.S. is trying to restrict.
Indeed, Gil. Important to point out here that this is a Wall Street Journal report. CNBC has not been able to independently verify this reporting, but of course, we're also looking into this story. And what we do know is the fact that these national security concerns are not necessarily new. In fact, the UAE has been actively pivoting away from Chinese tech for several years now. And the development of companies like G42, for example, has really been underpinned by the growth of US interests in this region. Let's also remember that the US and the UAE have a $10 trillion investment corridor, and technology is going to play a key role in that. So what is the actual concern here? Because, as I say, this is not necessarily new.
That's right. But the changes have been rapid, and the competition between the U.S. and China is intense. Let's not forget that under the Biden administration, the restrictions around chips were very broad. They were on 180 countries, including the UAE. It's very recent that the Trump administration excluded countries like the UAE from these restrictions. And so there's also a gap or a lag between when the administrative class reacts to the changes and when the political class made the changes. The political class made the changes. We're having less restrictions on those countries. The administrative class is still catching up, and part of it is putting in place the structure, the process, and the procedures to prevent any country from forwarding and reselling the chips into China. Again, this to me is a matter of time. To your point, it's important to point out that it's important for the United States to be able to participate and be the foundation for the growth of AI in the Gulf, because if the U.S. doesn't do that, the vacuum will be filled by China. So again, it's part of that competition. It's the direction the U.S. is headed in is working in close cooperation with the Gulf states, and especially the UAE, to develop data centers based on American technology. It just have to work out the process for doing so while reducing the risk that there'll be, again, even any amount of leakage of the top chips, the most advanced chips from any country, including the UAE, forwarded to China.
In the ever-evolving battle for dominance in artificial intelligence, one company sits at the heart of the global conversation: Nvidia. This week, Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, was on the ground in Beijing, navigating a landscape that's equal parts opportunity and geopolitical tension. At the opening of China's Supply Chain Expo, Huang delivered a speech highlighting the enormous potential of AI, not just as a tool, but as a full-blown industrial revolution. But the real intrigue came later, when Huang spent time with reporters, first casually outdoors, then moving into an air-conditioned room. Throughout, he carefully avoided direct answers about the highly anticipated H2O chips, Nvidia's specially designed U.S. export-compliant semiconductors for China. His message? The licenses are still pending. No green light yet from Washington. And while there may be orders trickling in, possibly from tech giants like Tencent, he didn't confirm much. He kept it vague. The reality is, Huang isn't in Beijing to make political statements. He's there as a businessman, and for good reason. China remains one of Nvidia's largest markets, despite U.S. sanctions. Billions of dollars are at stake, and Nvidia knows it's already lost substantial revenue due to export controls. Still, Huang made sure to show respect for Chinese tech progress. He praised Chinese AI models and even Xiaomi, the smartphone maker turned EV manufacturer. He met with the CEO and expressed admiration for their electric vehicles, powered by Nvidia's Thor chips. He even said he wanted to buy one. But perhaps more importantly, Huang emphasized that China's AI manufacturing and enterprise application strength should not be underestimated. He acknowledged that companies like Huawei, with their vertically integrated infrastructure, from chip design to cloud, pose serious competition. Huawei isn't just building chips, they're embedding AI directly into industrial sectors like mining and EVs, creating real-world applications, not just theoretical models. That's a major shift in the AI narrative. It's no longer about model performance alone. It's about how AI is being applied, who's building with it, deploying it, and profiting from it. That brings us to the RTX Pro chip scheduled for release in September. This isn't one of the company's flashy high-end GPUs. It's designed for industrial AI, particularly for manufacturing and robotics. In China, where robotics already dominate factory floors, the RTX Pro could support virtual environments, automation, and digital twins, tools that accelerate AI integration in heavy industry. And while the hype around Nvidia's market cap nearing $4 trillion is real, Huang is clearly focused on making AI useful, not just impressive. During his speech, he highlighted open-source models like DeepSeek, which are being downloaded and used worldwide, in healthcare, imaging, and beyond. Unlike cloud-locked platforms such as ChatGPT, these models are being deployed locally, closer to the industries they serve. Now, contrast that with what's happening in the Middle East. A deal between the US and the UAE, reportedly worth billions to supply Nvidia's advanced AI chips, is being delayed. Despite President Trump's initial green light during his May visit to the region, concerns remain. Why? The fear that these chips might find their way into China, either directly or through third parties. Sources tell the Wall Street Journal that US officials are still wrestling with the mechanics of how to execute the deal safely. Huawei, again, is part of the concern as it actively courts the Middle East for its AI hardware. Washington is especially cautious with nations like Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, which are viewed as potential backdoor routes for re-exporting advanced semiconductors. But the UAE isn't new to U.S. cooperation. In fact, the country has been pivoting away from Chinese tech for years, with U.S.-aligned firms like G42 leading that transformation. The U.S. and UAE even have a $10 trillion tech investment corridor, and AI is at its core. So what's the holdup? According to industry experts, it's a bureaucratic lag. While the political leadership, particularly under the Trump administration, has loosened restrictions for Gulf states, the administrative bodies are still catching up. They're working to create enforcement mechanisms that prevent ship leaks, including the use of trackers and hardware-level protections in data centers. Ultimately, it's about maintaining U.S. dominance in AI, especially in competition with China. The Biden administration had applied wide-ranging chip restrictions, even to countries like the UAE. Trump's return shifted gears, but only partially. And so, we're caught in a global balancing act. On one side, Nvidia needs to sell chips to thrive, and markets like China and the UAE are too big to ignore. On the other, U.S. national security strategy insists on keeping the most powerful AI hardware out of China's hands, directly or indirectly. In between, companies like Huawei are rapidly building homegrown alternatives, threatening to close the gap. As the world races towards an AI-powered future, these decisions about who gets access to what hardware will shape the geopolitical and economic balance of the next decade. For Nvidia, the mission is clear. Keep building, keep selling, and stay in the game without crossing the red lines drawn in Washington. And for the US, the goal is to lead the global AI transformation, not just in software, but in the hardware that powers it, and to do so without handing the keys to a rival superpower. This isn't just a story about one chip or one company. It's about the future of global power, measured in teraflops and semiconductors. This has been your update on Nvidia, China, the UAE, and